are very privileged to have Governor Parson join us this morning. The governor is a veteran who has served 6 years in the U.S. Army. He served more than 22 years in law enforcement as the sheriff of Polk County, and he also served in the Missouri House of Representatives from 2005 to 2011, in the Missouri Senate from 2011 to 2017, and as lieutenant governor in 2017 and 18. Governor Parson and First Lady Teresa live in Bolivar. Together they have 2 grown children and 6 grandchildren. He was raised on a farm in Hickory County and graduated from Wheatland High School in Wheatland, Missouri. He is a small business owner and a 3rd-generation farmer who currently owns and operates a cow and calf operation near their hometown of Bolivar. Governor Parson has a passion for sports, agriculture, Christ, and people. Governor Parson, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to address our members.
Oh, thank you, Vicki. Thanks for the introduction, but I'm going to quit having them read my bio. Sounds like I've never been able to hold a job in my career, so on that. But it's good to be on here, good to be talking to people again, good to be talking about the chamber and what's going on across the state. Good.
Well, thank you. So, tell us a little bit about, I think we kind of know what you've been working on, but, we've got some questions from our audience, but we'd love to hear from you first.
Let me kind of walk back to January and February of this year when seemed like we were on cloud 9, record low unemployment rates in the state of Missouri. Businesses were coming to town, all the way from in-state. We're doing expansions. We were getting companies from overseas to move their businesses to Missouri and all parts of our state. And revenues were doing well. We had some new programs out there to do with workforce development, job training, and infrastructure was in high gear. And then all of a sudden we hit something called COVID-19. And all of a sudden the spigot kind of got turned off, to say the least. And it's been a trying time for the last 90 days. I would say as governor, if there was, I've been through floods, I've been through droughts, I've been through tornadoes, but going through the COVID-19 was a whole new experience for all of us. To kind of figure out how to deal with that and how we got through that. Let me just say in the beginning of COVID-19, I think one of the things that was frustrating for me as a governor when that all took place is I don't think any of us knew exactly who it was going to affect, where it was going to affect, and what was that virus really going to do. And there was a lot of information coming from all kinds of resources across the United States. But one of the things looking back on it now that I've done early on was out of frustration a little bit, trying to figure out what was facts, what was not. We built our own dash models here in the state, a dashboard that we did, and then we used our own model to see what was happening in Missouri. So we could make good decisions on who to target. And we soon learned that the African American community was affected more, that nursing homes were high risk, food processing plants were high risk, prisons were at high risk. Anytime you had groups of people together was a high risk. So then we were able to target that. So we were able to do a lot of things there. The one thing I did learn from that, and from a business perspective, we were totally dependent too early on from foreign countries of getting supplies. And as governor, I don't ever want to be in that situation again. So we built what we call a Google Marketplace in Missouri for everyone that's listening today. And here's why you should listen, because this is going to be business opportunities in the future. But that Google Marketplace was designed here in Missouri to kind of partner with our healthcare community to buy supplies for them and to ask companies in Missouri to remanufacture, retool their companies during this pandemic and start making products like the gowns, like the masks, like the ventilators, all the type of things we were needing. There was 200 companies responded to that in the state of Missouri that was actually willing to retool their companies and do that. We're able to supply a lot of supplies we needed. The one thing I do look at from that as a business model now, as we move forward, wherever you are in the state, if there's a new company out there, somebody wants to retool to make what they call this PPE equipment, that opportunity will be an ongoing opportunity, I think, here in the state and I think in the nation. So that's something we should all look at to see. The federal government, I know, will be heavily involved in making sure that manufacturing happens in the United States. So I think we got an opportunity to bring some of that here to Missouri. So that would be one good thing out of the COVID-19. Our testing every day is increasing in the state of Missouri. We went from like 3,000 tests a day to now 12,000. We got to keep building that test structure up just to make sure that people are comfortable with the economy to get back out into to the workplace, to get back out and to spend money, to do businesses across the state. We know that's critical, and we're going to continue to ramp that up a little bit. As we move forward, let me move into today a little bit to where we were. I mean, it's just incredible. I wish I could spend more time to say what all's happened in 90 days of all the things that happened in the state. But I will say this, kind of ending on the pandemic portion of this. It was incredible what the people of the state of Missouri, the universities, the healthcare system stepped up and done in a time of crisis. And the everyday person, what they did to do their part. I guarantee you, from my position, it made you very proud to be the governor of the state of Missouri when you've seen people doing the right thing day in and day out. Not to say there wasn't problems there was, but for the most part, good. So let's go to today where we reopen the economy. We're trying to get people back out there. We're trying to get businesses back out there, trying to get people back to work. A lot of good signs. I think everybody was very anxious to get back out into the economy, to be back to, quote, some sort of normal life, whatever that might be. I'm not for sure yet, but we're headed in that direction. And then I think as you was I was in Kansas City last week, I think with Burns & McDonnell, with their expansion up there, that big announcement up there was good. We were in St. Louis a couple of days ago for Accenture, 1,400 new jobs there. We're working with a company out of Texas right now, a company in Sedalia, Missouri, that's actually going to shut one of their plants down in Texas, going to move it to Missouri. You've got Chewy, I think up there in that region up there, that's bringing their headquarters here to Missouri. That's going to be some new jobs. So I say those things because back in January and February, when I said everything was a lot better, those opportunities are still there. You still have a lot of opportunities to build the economy in the state of Missouri and to bring those businesses and to bring those jobs back here. So, you know, it's going to take us a little bit to get through this. I don't think you're really going to know. I want to say to around the fourth quarter of this year to kind of see where we are. But I think the trend is right now with the revenues look a little better in the state, better than what we thought they would at this time. And our highest number of unemployment was 440,000. That number is down to 300,000 today. So that's a good sign. A lot of people went back to work or going back to work every day. So we want to see those numbers keep trending in that direction. But for the most part, we're moving forward in the state. We're fortunate compared to a lot of other states, the position we're in. But the one thing I do know is we got to be able to deal with the virus and deal with the economy and getting people back into, we got to open up the schools, we got to get the universities back, and we got to keep moving forward. And we got to do both. And we got to figure out a way to do that and do it safely to protect people. So that's kind of where we're at right now. That's a quick version. I'm not sure what else you want me to be saying, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Apologize, I was on mute. We do have a few questions. You'd think after 3 months we would figure that out, right? We do have a few questions from our members. First, are you going to sign HB 1854 or veto it? The bill contains some costly modifications to municipalities related to the manner an election is to be held for the creation or expansion of community improvement district or transportation development districts.
Yeah. Well, we're in the review process, so I'll try to kind of do this, but I'll kind of let you know kind of what I think you want to know. That bill doesn't look too good about getting across the finish line. It just
okay.
I'll just tell you, there's multiple omnibus bills, and for anybody that doesn't understand the omnibus bill part of that, some of these bills have 37 provisions in there. Ranging from everything to A to Z, and you never know kind of what that is on that. So any of those things that are really huge, that's got a lot of different items in it, I don't know if there's going to be a real good chance of those things passing at the end of the day. But again, in fairness, we're still in the review process of that with general counsel and everybody's looking at it. But I know there's some issues in there that would hurt the cities and some of their expansions, some of the things they're doing in there. So it probably doesn't look good at this point.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question. As a natural health care practitioner in Missouri, we strongly disagree with mandating vaccines for not only health reasons, but also basic constitutional rights and liberties to take care of our personal health and the health of our families without medical intervention at the state or federal level. Although this may sound like a strong statement, I would consider somebody forcing myself or my children to vaccinate would be seen as an act of war against my body and my family and all of humanity, and completely contrary to health and freedom. With the passing of a mandatory vaccine law in Colorado, what is Missouri's stance on mandating vaccines for citizens of the state of Missouri?
Yeah, I think that's very unlikely we would ever mandate that. You know what? I've been very careful with that throughout my career to make sure that government don't extend. I mean, people are smart people out here. At some point, people have to make their own decisions on whether you want a vaccine, whether you don't. I don't think that's government's place to force that. Again, I think there's got to be the individual responsibility to decide what's best for them and their families. And I don't think that's necessarily government's place to mandate something like that. So I don't see that happening here in Missouri.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. If there is a second wave of COVID, do you think you would shut the state down again? What conditions or events would need to happen before we could take that step again?
Yeah, there's a lot to that question. First of all, I don't think we're going to shut the state down again. I just don't see that. I think what we know now about this virus, what we've learned about it in the last 90 days, we're well prepared to fight this virus. So I don't see us shutting the state of Missouri down again. I think, one, there's going to be other opportunities to curb that. I think we're a lot smarter. We know how to target it. We know how to do box-in strategy. We know how to fight the virus a lot better. So I think we're going to be much better prepared. So I don't see us shutting the state down again. But we are going to have to deal with the virus. The virus is not going to go away. It's still got to be out there. And we got to make sure people feel comfortable and safe. So we're going to have to do it at the same time. But I don't see us shutting the state down.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, Kansas recently passed a bill that provided protection for businesses who pivoted quickly to provide PPE during the pandemic. It is the COVID-19 Response and Reopening for Business Liability Act. Do you see Missouri doing something similar to that?
I do. I do on the legal liability. I think you'll see that. I think there's a good chance there'll be a special session in the next few months to be able to deal with that issue. And I think when you deal with that issue, it's not only the healthcare that you got to realize, it was all the manufacturers, all the suppliers. Some states kind of narrowed it down to just to the hospitals, the doctors, so forth. But look, people stepped up and did a lot of great things for our state to help one another out in a crisis. The last thing we need to be able to do is create legal nightmares for people for doing the right thing. We just don't want to do that. And we're going to try to make sure that doesn't happen in this state. So that will happen in a special session we'll be talking about.
Okay. All right. So our next question, they provided a little bit of background before we actually answer the question. Within 4 days of the stay-at-home order, which brought with it the realization that medical organizations and emergency responders were sharing what personal protective equipment, because there were simply none available unless you were an emergency room or COVID-19 treatment hospital. H&H was ramped up and producing PPE. We provided many local police and fire and retirement home organizations with PPE. We also worked very hard to clearly communicate that our products had no official certification, so each organization could make an informed choice. But now that some time has passed from the extreme need for face shields and masks, we are uncertain if, down the road, someone might product. It is a cloud that lingers over our good intentions and transparent communication. Will Missouri pass a bill that retroactively provide immunity for claims from companies who act in good faith to help our medical and emergency response folks with personal protective equipment?
Yeah, I think that, Vicki, I think that goes back to the original question before this. Yeah, that'll all be talked about in that to make sure that we're looking at those companies, again, that were providing services during that time to make sure they're protected on that. Again, that'll be all part of that conversation. But again, I think two things happened there. One, we want to make sure, just like the business you're talking about there, the one that they have an opportunity to stay in business to making those products and get the standards, whatever those standards are from FDA or CDC, find out how we do that. The one thing I do know, when we were so dependent on foreign countries, and China being the country we're all dependent on across the nation and in the state, it put us in a terrible situation that we couldn't even, basic products, we just couldn't, it wasn't available to us. And thank goodness for the companies like you're talking about there that stepped up and started helping us. So yeah, for them to do the extra mile to help the patients, the medical profession, and then all of a sudden think you're going to lose your business over that. you know, we got to protect them. We got to give them some protection, make sure that doesn't happen.
Great. Our next question, civil unrest in this country and maintaining law and order in this country. I guess my thought was that a national committee might be established to completely review our legal system top to bottom and make any recommendations for any changes it may feel should be made. We now have mayors being judge and jury. It was indicated that our county prosecuting attorney is requiring body camera footage saved for 10 years, which makes it financially not feasible for many cities. It seems to me that it should be a national standard. Therefore, there would be a need for a national committee. Is there any effort being considered to convene a federal committee to review and make recommendations for appropriate changes in our legal system?
Yeah, let me just talk. I'm not sure on the federal level what all they're doing. I know there's different people up there talking about different bills and different regulations. I can't imagine at the federal level trying to have a committee to do policies that would fit every community across the United States. It's very difficult as a governor of Missouri to figure out a policy that fits Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, Columbia, and then all of a sudden you got to go to a little town of Fairplay, Missouri, of 400 people with a 2-person police department. Do I think we all need to come to the table and start talking about ways to reform? Yeah, I think we can do that. I think you can always figure out ways to do things better. But the one thing I do, and this is me as a veteran of this country that you mentioned and been in law enforcement 22 years, there has to be a rule of law in place for society as a whole, and it has to always be in place. It has been since the biblical days, and it will continue to be to this day. We have to have law and order in our communities. And we got to figure out if we're doing things, if there's problems in there, we got to figure that out. But when you come to the protest and you see some of the things that are happening now across the country, whether it's tearing down the statues that are going across there, the violence that's occurring, nobody has the right to destroy somebody else's property. That's just fundamentally, we shouldn't be able to do that. So it's one thing to protest to a cause, you know, much like Martin Luther King did in his day. When they did it, they had a goal in mind and they had a reason they were doing it. And they did it in broad daylight so everybody would know why they were marching. I think we got to get back to, okay, what is the solution to the problem? And how do you obtain that? And I think you're going to have to do that. It'll all have to start on the local levels. But we just need to take our time to get through that to make sure we're doing the right things as we change the format of the criminal justice system. In Missouri, I will say this, since I've been in the Senate and the House, we've actually reformed our criminal justice system. When I first became governor or lieutenant governor, there was over 32,000 people incarcerated in the state of Missouri. Today, there's less than 25,000 because we're figuring alternative sentencing. We're trying to figure out how you get people back in the workforce. So it's a huge conversation to have, and how do we build onto that to do that? But it's not something you just do out of anger or out of just to make decisions like that. You really got to think through this process of what you're going to change. The same thing, I'll say this, and then I'll probably get off this subject before I get in trouble here, but it's like defunding the police. When you hear that, and I know that's been all national and it was here in the state, and I talked to some of the activists from St. Louis and Kansas City that I talked about. I said, what does that mean to you? When you say that, does that mean less police officers to respond to calls in your neighborhoods? Does that mean less traffic stops? Does that mean less going to domestic violence when you call somebody? Because a year ago, the homicide rates, as we all know in this state, were extremely high, both in Kansas City and St. Louis. Not something we want to be proud of. But we were wanting a law enforcement at that time. We was wanting people to go in there to deal with that. So again, what is the end game when we say those things? What is the end result going to be someday? And I think that's so. Needless to say, we really need to make sure we take our time and again, open the table up for everybody to sit down and figure out if we can have solutions to that. And what are those solutions?
Right. It's definitely a tough situation. So, okay. What is the status of the Wayfair legislation? I know it didn't make it through session. Do you expect it to be part of the special session?
You know, we don't know yet. You know, that's something I've supported all along. I think that's very important to be able to get that. And that's really just a fairness issue for the bricks and mortar businesses in our state. And if there was ever a time you've seen how much that cost us was during this pandemic. with everybody buying the way they were buying online and everything from businesses outside the state of Missouri. It just gave them a tremendous advantage over our local businesses who were struggling to keep their doors open and you know, couldn't even go down and open up their business in some parts of the state. You know, we got to figure out a way to capture that. And one, I don't ever look at that. I only look at that as a fairness issue. If you live here in this state and you own that property and you got to abide by all the rules and regulations of the state, why would we ever give some business outside the state of Missouri advantage over our own businesses here? So it's still a priority. I think we got to get something done on it. We'll see what's in special session or where they do it in session, but it's got to be a priority to be talking about.
Right, for sure. Well, I know most of our chambers, I believe all of our chambers have supported instituting that. So we're definitely behind making that happen. We, like you said, we've definitely felt what that looks like over the past few months with people ordering online. So that's very important.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for joining us today. Do you have any other comments you'd like to make, or?
Let me just say this, Vicki. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for everybody that's listening today. Just keep the faith. I mean, Missouri is a strong state. We've been through tough times before, and we're going to get through this. And we're going to have to do both at the same time. We're going to have to deal with the virus. We're going to have to deal with the economy and take care of people, making sure people feel safe when they go out. But at the end of the day, we'll be stronger than ever. And again, we'll get back to that rosier picture before all this took place, working on companies and jobs and job training and really building up the future of this state for the next generations. And we're going to work hard at that here at the governor's office. And we're going to be working with all you members in the chamber. And just thank you what you do on the local levels every day for keeping people's spirits up and taking care of your businesses back home. So thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. You know, you don't have an easy job. So we appreciate everything you're doing for our state. Definitely.
All right. Thank you, Vicki. See you.
Thank you.